What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Stephen Thompson, coming at you with an emergency recording of the Inside Pitt Report because we have some breaking news that we got to cover. The Pitt Panthers have made their first edition of the offseason. The transfer portal has been open for a while, but the Panthers, while they've been recruiting, while they've been contacting guys, they've been reaching out and working hard. They finally got their first commit after he went on his official visit to Pitt this weekend. That's right, Cam Corhen, a sophomore from formerly of Florida State. He's from Allen, Texas, 6'10", 225 pounds, attended Sunrise Christian Academy in high school and spent 2 years with the Seminoles before committing to the Panthers this morning. It's big news for the Panthers. It's a player who comes in and will address a position of need right now. To me, it looks like they've gotten their starting center, their next starting center for the 2024-2025 season. At least it looks that way on paper, but you got to keep in mind that what we're looking at on paper is a guy who spent 2 years in the ACC. Last year broke in as really the bona fide starting center for the Seminoles and really played very, very well. So there is a solid track record here. We are not just shooting in the dark. We're not looking at, a JUCO guy or a guy coming from a low or a mid-major who put up a bunch of numbers there. No, this is a guy who is a really solid performer as a really young guy at the ACC level, and I think clearly has a bunch of room to grow. So let's dive into a little bit of why he looks like such a good fit for the Panthers right now. First of all, he's a great pick and roll partner. You look at his numbers, you look at his film a little bit, and he is among the best, finishers of pick and roll plays that you will find in college basketball this year. He ranked in the 91st percentile by scoring by averaging 1.45 points per possession on pick and roll plays. That's via college basketball scouting. On YouTube, they have some great video breakdowns of transfer portal players, but it's not just that. He is also a fantastic offensive rebounder, 9.4% overall and 14.9% against top 50 quality opponents. That's via Bart Torvik, a great resource as well if you're looking for college basketball analytics. And he's got a growing array of post moves as well. That's something you see when you watch his highlights or watch him play, and the Panthers certainly saw it pretty up close and personal, when he dropped 25 points on the Panthers. That was a season and a career high on them at the Peterson Event Center earlier this season. I mean, he was able to beat Federico and Diaz Graham and Blake Hinson on the block with a really, really nice growing array of post moves. And then he's also got a little bit of a mid-range jumper that he doesn't break out very often, but that is certainly growing. So when we talk about what this guy can do offensively, you got to remember that he's still a work in progress. He is less than 20 years old. He'll be 20 years old when he arrives on campus in Pittsburgh, even though he's already spent 2 seasons playing Division I, Power 5 college basketball. I think in my mind, this makes him such a perfect fit for the Panthers. I mean, you think about the fact that Jalen Lowe, the fact that Ishmael Leggett are coming back for another season. That's really what your team's going to be built around. And ideally, maybe a third guard and then one more kind of scoring wing. But we'll get to that in a second. As at this point, Lowe is going to be running the show, and Leggett is going to, right now, at least, kind of be your next leading scorer. Those guys are going to be your engines, your offensive engines, the center of your team, really. They're going to play upwards of 35 minutes a night, and they're the focal point of your team right now. So I think giving them a big man who can be a really, really quality finisher at the rim was really, really important this offseason, and the Panthers did that. Corhen, I told you about kind of the growing post moves and the little bit of a mid-range game that he's got, but really this guy makes his living around the rim, averaging 9.4 points per game last season. 59% of his total field goal attempts and 71% of his made field goal attempts came at the rim or came on dunks. And he made all of those shots at a 75.7% rate. So he was extremely efficient while really focusing his game at the rim. Like I said, it's putbacks and offensive rebounds, a little bit of post moves here and there, but also playing off of his guards and playing in pick and roll spots. That's been really valuable for him as well. And I think when you put him next to a playmaker like Lowe and a guy like Leggett, who can play more in isolation but is growing, as a pick and roll playmaker, he's become a better passer, I think, as well, especially when he gets to a team where guys are a little more talented, when he has to take, less of the offensive load. Leggett has shown that he can expand his game a little bit. So I think Corhen's walking into a really nice spot, first of all, with those 2 guys in space, or in place already. I think this also allows you to move around Guillermo Diaz-Graham a little bit, who had been playing center for the first 2 years really that he was at Pitt, save for, the last, you know, 4, 5, 6 games, of the regular season last year where he got to play a little bit with Federico also on the floor, and he could be more of a 4 than a 5. I think the addition of Corhen, gives you more flexibility to move Diaz-Graham to the 4 spot where he can play a little bit more on the perimeter. He's not having to guard big bruising centers all the time. I still think he'll be limited defensively, but it's a little bit of a better matchup for the Panthers if they can keep Diaz-Graham at the 4, and roll with Corhen, and then, ideally, I think you'd have Papa Conte as his backup at the 5. You can really mostly play with 2 you can survive with really only 2 centers in your rotation, on the whole, and then, you've got Amdi Nadie, who's a true freshman set to arrive with the on campus this summer, who can give you some deep backup minutes and seems like a little bit more of a project, but someone that you can bring along when you have or bring along more slowly, when you have players like Conte and Corhen and Diaz-Graham to a certain extent in front of him. So I don't think Corhen really, upsets a whole lot in terms of what their roster looks like. I think he's going to fit in pretty seamlessly just because his skill set fits so narrowly into what the Panthers need. I feel like he is pretty simply just a better version of Federico. I mean, you'd like to see a little bit better, defensive rebounding. The defense is not great. It's serviceable and improving. He was a negative box plus minus defensively during his freshman season. He was negative 1.4, and now I believe he's up into the positives. He's maybe a point 0.5 positive or a point 0.2. Either way, he's getting there. The shot blocking isn't tremendous, doesn't jump off the page to you, neither do the steals. But it seems like he's got some decent tools. I think he's a really good athlete and he plays above the rim a lot. I don't see why that couldn't translate into some shot blocking or some steals or something like that. I think he can be a factor on defense, even if he's not so right now. I think Conte might be the better option defensively. We kind of don't know what he's going to be offensively, considering that he hasn't played a game of Division I college basketball yet. So it's a little bit up in the air. And like I said, on the other end, Corhen is a guy who's played 2 full seasons of Division I college basketball, Power 5 basketball, and been a rotation player for both of those seasons and a starter for a little bit of that second season. So I really see this as a pretty seamless fit for the Panthers, getting Corhen in there. I think he'll be your starting center next year. I mean, who knows what Conte could bring? Maybe, after he recovers from his injury, he really impresses and he shows that physicality that we were promised. I think that's the biggest thing is Corhen and Conte, whoever starts, whoever plays, has to be able to deliver a dose of physicality, has to be able to play hard, be a good screener, be a great rebounder, and finish at the rim. Finishing at the rim, man, that's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing for any Panthers big man who joins this team is that you got to be able to finish at the rim. Low and Leggett are going to put you in the right places. Your teammates are going to put you in the right places. They're going to share the ball. But one thing you saw last year with Federico and Diaz-Graham, to a certain extent, it felt a little easier to to tolerate with Diaz-Graham because he was knocking down some threes, but Federico, his inability to finish at the rim was really, really glaring and really hurt this team a whole lot this year. So someone who can just be a lob threat, who can dunk, who can finish layups through a little bit of traffic, that's going to be a massive, massive addition and a massive, massive offensive boost for the Panthers this year. And like I said, with the way that Corhen fits in kind of seamlessly, your needs don't change. I mean, the same needs that we've been talking about the Panthers needing to pick up really since, Federico and William Jeffress were headed to the transfer portal. It really stays the same. You need one more guard. They're still looking for one. They've just kind of started that recruiting process fairly recently with Bub Carrington announcing about a couple weeks ago that he was going to go to the NBA draft. But then with Jeffress and Federico and also Blake Hinson obviously gone, you're going to need another, kind of scoring wing, a guy who can play either the 3 or the 4. But you got 3 scholarships left to play around with in that sense. You addressed one big need at the center spot, and now you've got 3 scholarships to play around with. Those 2 positions of need, obviously the guard, scoring wing, and a 4, but then you've got one more that you can kind of play around with. You can say, and maybe we want to go get, another backup wing. Maybe we want to get a project big man who can stretch the floor or something like that. Another guard, maybe you just load up there. I don't know. I think you've got tons of options if you're the Panthers, and you just kind of find the best player that you can with that final scholarship spot. So we'll see how they use those. We'll see how they approach the rest of the offseason moving forward. We know they have tons of offers out there, and we know that they filled at least one of their open scholarships for the coming season. Congrats to Cam Corhen. Welcome to Pittsburgh. And that's how we're going to wrap up this video. Appreciate you all tuning in to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Stephen Thompson. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Inside the Panthers, and follow all of our reporting from the basketball offseason, the football offseason, and much, much more at si.com/college/Pittsburgh. Appreciate you all tuning in, and I will see you next time.